Welcome back to the Northern Sentinels podcast. I'm your host, Chris Ayotte. On this episode, I speak with Canada's youngest ever chess grandmaster, Mark Bluvshtein. Mark was born in the Soviet Union and was taught the game of chess by his father. After the fall of the wall, it became difficult to afford the basics, so the family immigrated to Israel, where Mark continued to develop his abilities in another very strong chess culture. After a few years in Israel, the family was on the move again and landed in Toronto when Mark was 11. Already a very high-level chess player, Mark quickly established himself as one of the best in Canada and became the youngest ever Canadian chess grandmaster at 16. He continued to play chess after high school and even became a full-time chess player to see how far he could develop his abilities. Mark remains involved with the chess community in Canada and espouses many of the virtues of the game, thinking ahead, assessing risk, and dealing with the consequences of your decisions. Thanks for your continued support, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Mark Bluvshtein. Mark, welcome to the Northern Sentinels podcast. Great to have you on the show. Thanks for taking the time to be with me today.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me here.
Now, where am I reaching you today?
I'm here in downtown Toronto in our office here on John Street.
Okay, so what is the office? What is the office? What's the company that you're working with?
I work for People Corporation, a large Canadian business headquartered in Winnipeg, primarily focused on group benefits. My role here is VP Digital Member Platforms, and I work with several of our entities here within People Corporation.
Okay. Well, we can certainly dig into People Corporation and how you ended up there later in the show. But let's kick things off with the origin story. So maybe give the listener a sense of, so where were you born? Like, where are your parents from? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in Russia. My parents were also born in Russia or the Soviet Union back in the days. Back in those days, my parents were born in the mid 50s, so a decade after the end of World War II. They grew up in different cities in the Soviet Union. They came from families that really valued education. They both got their university degrees. My mother studied economics and got her undergraduate degree in that. And my father studied engineering and got a PhD in engineering. And they actually met at work while both of them were working together at a research institute that was controlled by the government there in Yaroslavl, which is the city where my sister and I were born.
Okay. So at that point in the Soviet Union, was it common for women to go to university and to be professionals with that sort of academic background?
It was a mix. Women were. It was more common for women to be more educated during that time than earlier, but it was also a culture of women often staying at home. My mother was always driven and was always thirsty for education, and she was very passionate about getting that education, and she wanted to continue working, and that was great to see.
Now, you said that they both came from families that valued education. Did you have a chance at all to meet your grandparents?
I did meet my grandparents on both sides, and
Okay.
And they certainly valued education and were very loving of a family as a whole.
So what did they do? Like, what was the thing that made education in their minds so important?
It was part of the Soviet culture at that point, where in the Soviet Union, culture overall was very much driving education of all types, and the government actually funded education. So university was free for people who were going to university in the Soviet Union, and it was very common to, of course, get good grades in school, study hard there, and then go to university.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a game changer when you don't have you don't have a bill of $20,000 a year to go to university, or even more in the U.S. I mean, it certainly changes the lens at which you look at education when it becomes an option that's actually funded by the state.
Absolutely. And when all of your friends are going to university or trying to go to university, that really contributes to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So were you born in Russia, or was it still the Soviet Union when you were born?
I was born in the Soviet Union, in the part that then became Russia.
Okay, gotcha. Do you remember much of that point in your life?
Not a whole lot, and it's hard to actually differentiate between what I remember and what my family tells me in terms of stories. So a story like me running away from kindergarten and getting all the way from kindergarten to home, and knowing that my sister was home and walking all the way when I was 3 or 4, and doing so even though there's a train track that's in between kindergarten and home, and everybody was terrified that I would do that. Well, that I'd be safe that time, and that I would do that again. So that's one of those stories that I was told several times and I might remember. So I remember some things in that sense, like where we were, the type of a place that we were living in, a 1-bedroom apartment for a family of 4, where the piano took up half of that room, which was also traditional in
really?
those days.
I was going to say, why would you have a piano if it takes up half the space? But again, culture is a powerful thing, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I like the I like the idea of, is it a real memory or is it a memory that's been manufactured by storytelling? And I have some similar ones of my childhood as well. Situations, what I was wearing, and when I started to think about it, I'm like, there's no way I would remember that. That's got to be from pictures and stories that is generated in my mind about a memory that I actually can't draw upon. So you were in the Soviet Union, then Russia, for a few years, but I know because of our discussions previously that the family didn't stay in Russia for that long after you were born. So what precipitated the move, and where'd you go?
That's right. When I was 5, my parents decided to move away from Russia. It was shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union, and Russia was going through a tough time. We were, I'd say, middle class, but middle class was not doing well at that time in Russia, and it was hard to put food on the table consistently, and the right amount of food. And my parents, both educated, they wanted something better for their children, and they made the very hard decision to move from Russia to Israel, where Israel has a policy of taking in and supporting anybody with Jewish blood. And my parents made the decision to move to Israel, even though it is a different language. So they had to start working in Hebrew. They had to learn Hebrew almost from scratch, which was a huge transition. It was a very brave move on their end in an attempt to give my sister and me a better life. And we spent the next 6 years in Israel, and then they decided to make a similar decision in moving from Israel to Canada, again, to try to provide for a better life for my sister and me. Again, going from working in Hebrew to then moving to Canada and needing to work in English. They had some English before they moved to Canada, but they needed to learn a ton there. Very impressive. And when I think about making those types of decisions of moving countries with little knowledge of what's to come, new languages, it's very impressive, and it is harder than anything that I've done in my life. in terms of what they did there.
Yeah, I've interviewed a number of people who have very similar origin stories in terms of this stepping into the unknown, parents stepping into the unknown, going to the work, going to safety, going to something, but leaving the known for the unknown. I don't know if it's a lost art or what has changed, but I'm not sure. Maybe in the Western world, I'm not sure it's as common as it used to be. But yeah, so did economic hardship in Russia, was that because your parents were working for? I'm assuming that they were working for the state at a research facility, and that of course, as that crumbled, that became sort of a lot less stable in terms of income.
Exactly right, and the same types of wages were buying you less than they did before, and in terms of opportunities, there weren't a lot of opportunities to improve life in Russia at that point, and it was for them about learning what others had experienced elsewhere. Where my grandmother at that time, with my aunt, so my father's mother and sister, they were already in Israel, and they were enjoying another life, and we had other friends who were already in Israel who were sharing the experiences, and Israel was supporting immigrants and helping them settle in, and that was a real opportunity for us.
And what does life look like as a kid in Israel? So, like, do you live in an apartment building in Tel Aviv, or where do you land? Like, what does that look like?
When we arrived in Israel, we were staying in a kibbutz for a short period of time, which is how Israel tries to help you settle in Israel and learn the language and figure out work. And then shortly after that, we moved to a bigger city, to Haifa, and we lived in an apartment building there. And we lived in 2 different apartment buildings in Israel while we were there. And for me, I was young, there from the age of 5 to the age of 11, and it felt like a normal childhood in a different language. It's also where I started playing chess, and in hindsight, chess really helped me be comfortable anywhere, because there's only one game of chess. You can play chess with anybody who speaks or doesn't speak your language, anybody of different ages as well. But it was what I thought was a normal childhood. I still think that it is a somewhat normal childhood. I loved playing soccer. It's a big soccer culture over there in Israel. There was a time when I was thinking maybe I'll be a professional soccer player, and then I got the bad news.
Dissuaded from that.
An unlikely path for me, but it felt like a good childhood. The culture there was inviting for people of all different backgrounds, including me and my sister with a past in Russia.
So, what is a kibbutz exactly?
It is a community, and there are a lot of different kibbutzes. And this is quite some time ago, so that might have also changed. But it is a community that tries to support the members of the community in different ways. So
can a kibbutz be like? Is it a rural setting, or is it a urban setting? What is there something that's sort of stereotypical about how it looks, the look and feel, or can it be varied as any community is?
It is usually a more rural type of a setting, which is more secluded for that community, with a clear process of who comes in, the support that is provided, the work that might be done on the kibbutz.
And is that where is one of the sort of mandates then that's where people start to learn Hebrew? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Exactly. So those types of programs help people really assimilate into into the culture there, learn the language, get the support needed. It is a completely different culture.
Yeah.
Thinking about Israel versus Russia, outside of the language as well, and of course in Russia this was the former Soviet Union, so very different, very different culture all around in Israel.
So where's Haifa located in the country?
It is a bit closer to the north,
Right.
and the northwest.
So was there any sort of conflict or strife that went on in your time in Israel before you came to Canada?
Um, there was no significant conflict that happened while we were in Israel. There were always precautions. And this is from my memory. My memory tells me that there were no significant conflicts. It might be different in reality. It was always about being ready for potential conflict, and all members of the family had a gas mask in case something does go wrong. Everybody in Israel is prepared for the worst type of an outcome there. In Israel, it was, and of course is,
Yeah.
challenging time from a political standpoint. And while we were there, the one political event that really stands out is the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister, I believe, in 1995, if my memory serves me right there.
How did
and that led to some change?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess you probably wouldn't. You were probably not following the geopolitical situation at your age in Israel, but yeah, that level of preparation is, notwithstanding why Israel is prepared in that way, I think is something that actually all communities should be prepared in the way that's important for that community for the eventualities. So for here, I mean, it really comes down to natural disasters and being prepared for outages and floods and fires and things like that. And I think it's one of the things that we could certainly do better as communities, be better prepared for things that we know are going to happen. We just don't know when. Maybe before we talk about the next step to Canada, we could start talking a little bit about chess, which is such a big part of certainly a big part of your youth and big part of your life. So how did you get introduced to the game?
My dad taught me how to play chess at the age of 5, and he used to be a competitive chess player himself. Played a lot back in Russia, and he loved and loves the game to this day. And he taught my sister and me how to play chess. This was the second time that he tried, where I picked it up.
Yeah.
There was a failed attempt there earlier, and I started enjoying the game, and my dad and I played on a daily basis. And something that I was very curious about is why I was losing to him every time. Even though he started off with less pieces, he gave me some piece odds, and the number of pieces kept decreasing as I got better, but he just kept winning against me every single time, and it made no sense. We have the same position. Why should I be losing? And this got me very curious. I think that it made me more competitive as well. And I really wanted to learn and understand how to be better so that I wouldn't be losing in that sense. And I started playing at the age of 5. Then at the age of 7, I started playing in some tournaments in Israel, and I started playing with adults as well at the age of 7 in a local club. And I spent the next years playing a lot. Became one of the top chess players in Israel for my age group. I won my age group in Israel twice. This is under the age of 10 and under the age of 12 in Israel. So I got to travel to the European Championships to represent Israel, where Israel was competing there at that time, and then the World Championships as well for my age group. So it was a very interesting experience while I was young to actually get to travel to different places in the world. Traveled to Estonia and Spain at a young age, competing against different individuals from different countries, and it gave me great exposure that I otherwise wouldn't have as a child.
So was your dad coaching you the whole time?
My dad was my first coach, and he soon realized, probably realized when I was 7, that he didn't want to be my my future coach. And this is part of the nature versus nurture debate, where he nurtured me in such a way that gave me incredible opportunities, and he always hired the best coaches that he could find for me to help elevate me to the next level, and really enhance the nurture part. And the one coach that was very impactful for me in Israel, Avshorm Mutskevich, he was known in the community, and he was my coach for 3 to 4 years, and he taught me a lot of things that my dad couldn't teach me. He was a professional coach who coached a lot of grandmasters who came up through the ranks as well, and he built that foundation, that chess foundation. It's like an incredible tennis coach can just teach you in ways that are different than a parent can. And he also got me to be more competitive. I remember he, when I made mistakes, he smacked me on the back of my head in a loving and caring way. And it also allowed my dad to take a step away from coaching, where, of course, my parents were both working in Israel, and Avshorm was an incredible coach at that time. And then there was also, close to the end of our time in Israel, my dad hired another coach to try to help me get to an even higher level, a coach that was working with one of the top players in the country at that time. And Mark Ruderfer is the name of that coach. So he was always trying to get me the best coaching possible, and really try to support my chess dreams, where I really wanted to be a grandmaster. That was the aim. I didn't realize how far I was from grandmaster, but I knew that I was not there, of course.
I think that even people who, like me, who have zero sort of understanding of the game or background in the game, know that the Soviet Union and Russia, I mean, chess is taken very seriously, and there's some pretty noteworthy names in history of chess grandmasters from Russia. But was it the same in Israel? Did it take chess seriously? Could you actually get good competition? And I mean, you've named a number of coaches here, but was this a place where chess was seen as something that was taken seriously?
Chess was and still is taken very seriously in Israel. And a lot of Soviet grandmasters actually moved to Israel to create that chess culture in Israel. There was some government support, and there was a time when Israel had the highest ratio of grandmasters per population,
really,
in the world. And of course, Israel's population is not that massive, but Israel has always had that strong culture on the chess side.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't guess that comes a bit of a surprise, but I mean, I can only assume it's a result of the immigration and the welcoming post World War II of Jews from around the world, drew in talent from all sort of walks of life and professions and skill sets. So, you mentioned that, kind of like tennis, right? These coaches, established a really important foundation for your future in chess. So what does a good foundation look like in chess? So I think we can all sort of picture from playing sports that you do sort of different drills and you work on different skills from a physical standpoint. But what does it look like when the game is not physical, but it's mental? What does a what are the sort of patterns, or what are the things you need to do to establish a good chess foundation for the future?
Chess foundation can be approached in different ways, but I would think about it in terms of foundation in each phase of the game. So you have the opening, which is the start of the game, the middle game, and then the end game, where the end game is generally when there are a lot less chess pieces on the board. In the opening, the chess foundation is about setting up standard openings that a player is comfortable with, and that with white give a player a relatively good position, also working through the ideas of that opening, with black getting the position to approximate equality, but getting that opening in place so that the individual understands the ideas in the opening and also has to memorize some lines. Then with the middle game, it is about helping identify the general patterns of chess. So things like knight on the rim is dim, as the saying goes, and other things that are more common for the middle game to give a player a feel for the position. And in chess, something that's very hard to establish is a way to cut down the number of options in a position to the ones that should be considered. So a player might have 60 legal moves in the position, and somebody who does not know how to play chess might have to consider all 60 moves. As somebody who has been playing for a long time knows that out of the 60 moves, maybe 3 are worth considering.
Okay.
And 1 is a favorite right away. So building that intuition based on just analyzing the positions, knowing that pushing a pawn too far early in the opening is dangerous. You should be developing your pieces. Things like that in terms of helping develop that feel is very important. And then in the end game, it is about teaching more fundamental end games, things that are rook end games are very common, where it's king, rook, and pawns, helping understand the power of pieces through the end game. And chess foundation should be split into all 3 of those elements, and a great coach can help elevate all 3 parts of that game.
Is there any point at which you're not applying a model to what you're seeing on the board? Is there points at which, for lack of a better term, you're sort of going by feel or by gut? Or are you always looking, like you said, I know there's these 60 options and I'm very quickly eliminating, that pattern, that pattern, that pattern. Nope, I like these ones now. So is it always about finding the right option from what's known, or is there any point at which it makes sense to work off instinct?
It's really a combination of having a feel for approximately what you should be doing, and then having a brute force of actually calculating the variations, because you're always thinking, if I make this move, my opponent will make that move, and then I have these multiple options. And you're building a tree full of branches in your head to understand where the position might end, and you're also assessing where your opponent might have different options and where you might be missing something. It's like in golf, for example, if you are thinking about getting from your first shot somehow to the green, it might take multiple shots. In chess, it is a full game. The whole game is a combination of those shots, where in golf, you don't have an opponent. In chess, you do have an opponent. So you're of course thinking about how to go after your opponent's king over time while also protecting your own king. And you are always building that tree of branches, tree of variations. And in the end of every branch, you need to be assessing the position, thinking, well, I think that my position is good here, so I should try to go in this direction, versus I think that my position is bad here, so I should avoid going in that direction. So there's always this attempt to assess the position somewhere on the spectrum of my position is losing on one end of the spectrum to my position is winning on the other end of the spectrum. Unfortunately, it's usually somewhere very close to the middle, where I'm somewhere between a bit worse to a bit better.
Yeah. It just, I mean, it sounds mentally exhausting, which sort of leads me to the question. And I don't mean this like in a pejorative sense this is like strictly a biological question. There must be limitations that each person has innately based on their cognitive ability to run this optionality, to run the different numbers, and to do it within the limits that the game requires you to do so, right? So as an example, my wife and daughter think it's hysterical anytime I play Scrabble, because I'll just sit there and look at the board for a shocking amount of time as I'm trying to figure out, because my brain just does not run through words like that. So they'll refuse to play with me because I just take an inordinate amount of time on things. And I know in chess, one of the things that you taught me in the sort of the pre is how, this is bound by time and in different versions of the game. So there's got to be some sort of biological limitations that if you can't sort of do certain things, you can't get to certain levels. Is that fair to say?
From what I've seen, it's really about the wiring and rewiring of the brain.
Okay.
And my brain has been wired on the chess front from the age of 5, where at the age of 5, I started thinking differently about the game of chess and saw different opportunities. So if I started playing chess at the age of 5, if I would have started at the age of 10 while doing other things for those 5 years, I would likely not be as good as I am in chess. And the earlier you start, the more opportunity you have to actually rewire your brain. And I see this wiring and rewiring similar to hockey. To become an incredible hockey player, you should likely start young, as we've shown here in Canada. I am a very bad skater. My wife used to be a competitive hockey player, and her brain was wired so that she's comfortable on skates. She's comfortable on the ice. I am not comfortable on the ice, at least partially, because I lack the skill on the ice. But it is about really the wiring of the brain, where I think that if people start playing chess at a younger age or doing other things at a younger age, they have an opportunity to really wire their brain accordingly. We've seen this interesting trend in the world of chess in recent years with India coming from not being a superpower in the world of chess, having one incredible chess player in history, in Vishy Anand, former world champion. Today, India just won the chess Olympiad.
Okay.
And India won the chess Olympiad for the open division and the women's division. And in the open or men's division, India just dominated. They won 10 team matches and tied one, if I remember correctly. And their team is full of youngsters who all started at a young age and got incredible nurturing as well, because India has been really supporting chess internally and really is starting to dominate the world of chess. And they're playing such exciting chess, which is just wonderful to watch. They're trying to get very exciting positions from the very early days. So I'd say that it is about the wiring from an early age, and it's hard, I think, for people to pick up chess at a later age, just like it is hard for me to pick up skating and hockey at a later age.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Now, because you started so young, and as you've just outlined, I mean, this was important to be able to achieve what you achieved, as we'll get to. Was there sort of a level of expectation about what you should or what you could achieve? That whether you put this on yourself or just being a good player at a young age, that this is what you should aspire to reach.
I wanted to win every game in every tournament that I played in. That was the short-sighted aspect of it. And then longer term, I wanted to become a grandmaster. And I don't think that there was pressure from my parents in the long run. In the short term, I spoke to my dad after every game of chess that I played until I stopped playing competitive chess. So there was always that push to win every game and do the best that I can by me and my parents. I did quit chess a few times when I was very young, but it was for as long as maybe a week at a time. So it wasn't.
We'll call that quit. We'll call that
quite
a
a real.
pause.
Yeah, a very short pause, which at a young age felt like forever.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's funny that.
Yeah, and that was after tough tournaments where I was very competitive and I was taking the losses in a tough way and felt like I needed a break. But in the end of the day, it was so much fun. It was so interesting to push myself to be better and compete against others.
So you're in Israel and the family makes the decision to come to Canada. And what drove that decision?
It was once again for a better life for my sister and me. And my sister just finished high school at that time, and my parents were looking at moving to Canada or another country, and they really liked what Canada had to offer in all aspects of life here. Of course, the political stability is very, very important, and also the opportunities to work, where especially my dad had exposure to other parts of the world in terms of work and working with American companies at that time, and they saw it as a great opportunity to open new doors in a country that is very stable. And when we talk about the different political parties here in Canada, they are very similar to one another when we compare it to political parties in other countries on the full spectrum. And my parents wanted that better life, and they were hoping this would be the last move for them, and they decided to make the move. And I was 11 at that time. Of course, for my parents, it was much harder than for me, and for my sister, it was much harder for me as well, as she was entering soon entering university. But my parents made the decision that it was the right thing for us at that time.
So, was there somebody in Canada that had gone before? So, sort of like you said, you already had family in Israel, mm-hmm. So that was some social proof there and some feedback. Was it a similar case in Canada, or was it a little bit more of a leap of faith?
It was a similar case. We had some family that was living in Canada, and my parents had close friends who were also living in Toronto. So when we moved to Toronto, we actually stayed at that family's basement for about a month, and they were generous in helping us settle in and having us stay there. And life seemed better, different opportunities for living, for generating wealth, and all aspects of life. And my dad started looking for a job even before we moved to Toronto. And on day 7 or 8 of us being in Canada, he actually landed a job, which was just
awesome, incredible,
and speaks to the work ethic that both of my parents had. So we had that social proof, and of course, my parents were determined to make it work. Mm-hmm. And my dad started work soon after joining, and then my sister also started applying to universities, and she soon started her university journey at York University, again in another language. very impressive. And my sister has always aced university and schooling, even when it is in different languages.
Amazing.
Which is how she was always a role model to me and doing such exceptional things.
So she first language is Russian, then she learned Hebrew, and then she came to Canada and did university in English. Okay. It's moments like this, Mark, where I feel inadequate in so many ways. I hear these sort of stories, and I mean, my English is pretty decent, and that's about where it ends with my linguistic abilities.
I'm limited on the linguistics side as well, and it is just so impressive to see my parents and sister really do things across 3 different languages, and always excelling.
Yeah, amazing. Now, so you're in Toronto as a kid. You said you were 11.
Yep.
How now you have left an environment, a chess environment where it's taken very seriously. So, what was the chess environment like in Toronto when you arrived in Canada?
The chess environment in Canada was weaker in general. It was interesting when we arrived to Toronto. I had nothing to do. I didn't really speak the language. I was living in a friend's basement with my family. I had a month before starting school in a new language, and all I did was study chess. And that month of just studying chess was incredible for my development. I immediately had that boost. Of course, with some support and guidance from my dad at that point, but that real focus helped. And I also started playing tournaments, and the tournaments helped me settle in and feel like Toronto is home in this new chess community. And very quickly, I went from being the top chess player in my age group in Israel to being the top chess player in my age group here in Canada. And also playing with adults. And even though chess wasn't as strong in Toronto and Canada as it was in Israel, it's always been a very inviting and great community in chess with regular tournaments that are accessible.
So, do you remember what that was like as a kid playing against adults? Because I dare say, egos are a fragile thing. So, I mean, nobody likes to be trounced by an 11-year-old who just arrived from Israel, who doesn't speak a lot of English, and you just wipe the walls with you at a chess tournament. So, do you remember that? What that was like playing as adults?
Yes, it was. It wasn't really a big change, I think, from Israel. Chess is really a game of all ages, and I wasn't the only kid who was winning against adults. I guess I was winning against more adults than most. All chess players, especially in Canada, from what I saw at that time, were inviting and excited about the challenge. And chess players all have a rating that indicates how strong they are. So the higher the rating, the better. And my rating at that time was already quite high. And they knew that they weren't playing a kid; they were playing somebody who has this rating. Now my rating was increasing pretty quickly, so they weren't happy to be contributing to that increase in rating because it meant that their rating was decreasing. But it was inviting, and this, I think, goes back to me being 5 and thinking, we're starting with the same position. I want to beat you. And that got me excited about every game.
Can you explain how the rating system works? As you said, like if they're losing, they're adding to yours and it's being taken away from theirs. Can you give us a bit of a sense of how this rating works? And I'm assuming it's international, so it doesn't matter if you're someone who is in Jakarta or if you're in Toronto. The rating's the rating. Yeah. Okay.
Well, there are different. This is where chess never tried to make it easy for everybody. There are international ratings that are governed by FIDE, which is the world governing organization for chess. So international ratings are FIDE, and then there are national ratings. So in Canada, there are Canadian ratings, and those two are separated. Now, with FIDE ratings, which are very popular now and are in effect in every large tournament, if I play somebody who has the same rating as me, and if I draw them, then our ratings don't change. If I beat them, then I gain 5 points and they lose 5 points. And if I lose to them, I lose 5 points, they gain 5 points. And the number 5 is specifically at my rating level. If it is somebody who has a rating that is much lower than mine, and I beat them, then my rating goes up by very little, and their rating goes down by very little. If I play somebody with a much lower rating and I lose to them, my rating goes down by a fair bit, and their rating goes up by a fair bit.
Gotcha. So are these? So if, let's just say tomorrow you start coaching me, and I want to learn the game and get into this. At what point do you start getting rated nationally or internationally, and do those things happen concurrently?
Those things happen concurrently, and these tournaments, they advertise as being rated with Canadian ratings or FIDE ratings or both. So if you were to enter the playing arena, then the tournaments would likely be rated with Canadian ratings because there are additional fees that need to be paid for them to be rated with international ratings. So it would be initially with the Canadian ratings, and then over time, as you might play more, you would potentially get an international rating.
Okay. So you come to Canada. So when you came to Canada, you already had an international rating.
I did, yes.
And you'd already mentioned the title of Grandmaster. So how does one achieve that level, and what exactly does that mean in the world of chess?
Two things are required to get to the Grandmaster title. On the one side, you need your rating to pass a certain level, and on the other side, you need 3 tournament performances of a certain caliber. So on the rating side, your rating has to pass 2,500. And for context, Magnus Carlsen, the number 1 rated player in the world, is over 2,800. That's his rating. So 2,500 is not number 1 in the world. It's also much higher than other levels. So the master rating is 2,200. 2,500, the grandmaster rating, is sort of halfway between Magnus Carlsen and master level. So 2,500 rating as a minimum, and then 3 performances at a certain level against a certain level of competition. So generally, these are called norms. A grandmaster norm, or a grandmaster level of performance, means that you need to play at least 3 grandmasters in a tournament of a certain level and perform at that 2,600 level. So have a 2,500 rating, performance of 2,600. It's the equivalent of reaching, let's say in tennis, let's say a round of 16.
Right, in a Grand Slam.
In a Grand Slam or in a TPA event. It's not quite the same thing, but it's just having a performance of a certain level against a certain level of competition.
Okay. And so when did you achieve that title?
I became a Grandmaster at the age of 16, youngest Grandmaster in Canadian history. At that time, it was also pretty young by global standards. It's not so young by global standards nowadays. It was a journey together. I became an international master at the age of 13. So international master is the second highest title in chess. And then from the age of 13 to 16, I worked quite hard. My first grandmaster norm, my first grandmaster level performance, the first of the three, actually came when I was 15, and it was in a tournament in Hungary. And I thought, this is great. The grandmaster title will be easy to achieve. This is just a matter of time, and we'll get there
Right.
in very short order. And then I had some very unsuccessful tournaments, and I thought, this is never going to
happen.
And at that time, I was in high school. I wanted to become a grandmaster, of course, the youngest one in Canadian history. And it's interesting to go back to the nurture aspect again, because my dad saw that I was missing something, and I was not playing at that grandmaster level. And he actually hired another coach for me. And he hired an Israeli coach for me by the name of Alex Huzman. And Alex Huzman was coaching the number one chess player in Israel. He was working with Boris Gelfand for already a long time. And my parents hired Alex Huzman for a 10-day session in Toronto. Alex was staying at our home, and we were working from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. for 10 days. We had a couple of days break in between, but it was a total of 10 days in terms of actually working. And it was absolutely exhausting, and it was so much fun. And it's the expression of, you don't know what you don't know. He showed me so many of the things that I just had no clue about. And he elevated my game tremendously. And I would hope that I was picking things up like a sponge at that point. And then the next two tournaments that I played after that session with Alex were both grandmaster norms. And because I also had these incredible performances, my rating passed 2,500. So immediately after that session, I became a grandmaster at the age of 16.
So I've got a couple questions off that. So what exactly then? I mean, it's not like you're just new to the game. I mean, you're already operating at the highest levels. So what does someone like that come in, and how does he identify, or how does he change things in your game or show you what you don't know? Because it just seems to me that you're already operating at that level. There's probably I would think there's very little you don't know, but clearly you were missing some key pieces.
That's exactly right. And my dad and I did not know what the gaps were. I won some games against grandmasters, but I really lacked that consistency. And he came in, and when we go back to the breakdown of chess of opening, middle game, and end game, my openings were just very weak compared to where I needed to be. And openings in chess are like your serve in tennis. And he managed to increase my chess serve by 10 kilometers per hour while also improving accuracy.
Okay.
So the opening just became drastically better with the white pieces and the black pieces. And then in the middle game, having spent 10 days of analyzing positions with him, I could see that he was just better at maneuvering than I was, at logical themes and positions, figuring out, again, if you have 60 legal moves and you might be considering 3, he might have actually said, well, you're considering 3, but one of the 3 you shouldn't be considering, and there's actually a third other move that you should be considering. And he got me to understand different positions better, and that's the middle game. And then in the end game, he taught me how to win positions that are very hard to win against top level players, and also draw positions that maybe I would often lose. And in chess, like in tennis, for example, it is about consistently putting pressure on your opponent, consistently creating problems, and not having unforced errors. And that 10-day session with him was about reducing the number of unforced errors that I would have. And that's what chess players do as they improve, really become more consistent and reduce the number of errors.
Okay, so you go through this session and you figure out what you don't know. Um, but in the chess world, if you have, so let's say before you went through this intensive training period, would your weaknesses or those gaps be known by opponents, like well known? Because you have to record everything, right, in your
Yep.
game. So does that get? I mean, this is really sort of pre-internet age. Like, does that get around that if you're now sitting across the board from Mark, like I know where his gaps are, and I'm going to, like you said, put pressure on it to force him in those directions. Is that the case, especially pre-internet?
That that's exactly right, and these are the earlier days of the internet, and all the games were being recorded. And in chess, there were always chess databases that included all the games of top players. So all of the tournaments that I was playing at that time recorded. Well, I had to record the games on a score sheet, and then the games would be entered into the databases. So my opponents would always be analyzing my games before we played to understand which openings I'm playing and also what my weaknesses are. And I would be trying to do the same things. And grandmasters would often look at where I might be losing games against other players, where I might be missing something, and try to poke holes in that. So if they, similar to tennis, if my backhand is weak, they would go to my backhand. In chess, you can have a lot of backhands in terms of weak areas, but openings are often a weakness for different players. And my coach at that time tried to really improve my weaknesses or find ways for people to not be able to find my backhand. So start playing positions or playing openings that really move away from my weaknesses.
So I'll draw an analogy here for this question. So I know nothing about chess. I follow professional cycling avidly, and so they have 3 grand tours throughout the year. They have Italy, France, and Spain in that order. And it's often said in their 3-week, what makes a grand tour is it's a 3-week bike race. And what they often say in grand tours is you cannot win the grand tour in the first week, but you can certainly lose it. And I'm wondering if it's similar because of the 3 sort of phases of a chess game, of a match, if it's similar in that way, and that in terms of the opening, that you may not be able to win it in the opening, but you could certainly lose it.
It is similar. And when we think about chess, there's the game itself, and the game is part of the tournament. And most tournaments are 9 rounds long, or sometimes they are longer. The game itself, you can potentially lose or get close to losing early in the opening. But then in the tournament, you can't win the tournament in the first 3 rounds. But if you lose 2 of those first 3 games, you've lost the tournament. The tournament is worth scrapping in that sense. So that's where every game is part of a bigger tournament flow.
So there's, even if you have a bad opening, there's certainly it can be recovered at some point in that game.
Yes, and that was part of my specialty. I had a lot of bad openings, unfortunately, and I managed to recover a fair number of them by always creating problems for my opponents.
Now, when you become a grandmaster, what is there a ceremony? Do they just mail you something? Like, how is this actually recognized in the chess world?
I believe that I got a diploma and a pin. There might have been some ceremony in Toronto. I think that there was. That was organized by the Chess and Math Association. I believe it was. Interestingly, this was 20 years ago, so I believe that there was something small, but nothing significant on the FIDE side.
That's too bad, because it's a significant accomplishment, and especially if you just look at the volume of chess that you have to play to accumulate the points to just get to the one gateway to get to 2,500 plus. I mean, you're not starting to be able to really move the needle significantly till you're already at that point. Like you were saying, you're already a high level chess player, and then you can go up in increments of 5. So, I mean, this is a lot of chess that you're playing in order to get there, and playing internationally. Yeah, no, it's you know if it's any different today? Do they make it more of a big deal today, or is it still sort of like, here's your diploma and your pin and like, congratulations?
I assume that it's similar today. I'm not sure. I also think about this as qualifying for the big leagues. Like if you're trying to get into the Premier League in soccer, similar to chess, you need to be a grandmaster to get into the big leagues.
Right. So it's really it's just a gateway. So nobody's celebrating necessarily getting into the Premiership, but they're celebrating winning the Premiership. Yeah, no, exactly. That's a good way to frame it. Okay, so you're a grandmaster, like super young grandmaster. I mean, where do you go from there? So now you entered the Premiership. So what does that look like now as a young grandmaster having entered the big leagues?
Well, I wanted to just keep getting better, and when I just became a grandmaster, I think that my rating was 25-20, around there, and I was 16. I wanted to keep pushing myself to be better, and the next key milestone was 2600 in rating. And when I was playing chess, the celebrations were short. And then it was on to the next challenge, trying to figure out how to get there. And I was trying to do this while being in high school, playing against largely professional chess players where all they are doing is playing and studying chess. I was excited about that challenge.
Was that the ambition, to just be a full-time professional chess player?
I wanted to see what that would be like. I was curious about that. At the same time, I knew that I had to finish high school. And growing up in my household, high school was a non-negotiable, and my sister was at that time already done with university as well. So in my eyes, high school has to be done, university has to be done, and we'll see what happens to the chess career. I was young and naive at that age, but I also knew that I didn't know anything outside of chess. I knew chess quite well at that point, but I did not know what else was out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Was it fairly isolating? Because I mean, if you're an awesome hockey player in this country, right? I mean, like everybody can relate in some way, whether they actually can or can't. But chess is not. I can't imagine chess is that way. So did it have an isolating effect on you being in this sort of small, sort of elite intellectual community playing this game?
I don't think so. And in school, I was just a normal kid. I was on the school soccer team, and I was always a starter on the soccer team. And before that, I was playing on school basketball teams as well. So I was trying to manage the two lives of just being a normal school kid and then being a very good chess player. And it didn't feel isolating. It felt like I had something that was very different, and my schools were always very supportive of my chess, where they allowed me to miss weeks of school just to play in a chess tournament, which in hindsight was very nice of them.
No, it's good. But I mean, it sounds like I've run into athletes before whose entire identity was tied up in their sport and their game. It doesn't sound like that was the case for you.
No, I loved doing normal things, and I loved playing soccer and basketball. And when I was young, playing 2 hours of soccer or 2 hours of basketball, it was incredible. the high that you get from that with friends. Ideally, you're winning. It was such a great experience where chess was a big part of my life, and a big part of my identity. But I was very proud of playing basketball and soccer, and tennis, and doing other things as well.
Was that for other especially young grandmasters that you knew, was that common that they had this sort of diversity of things they'd like to do, or did you find that maybe there was a dominance of chess in their lives, and that sort of became a bit of their identity?
There was certainly a dominance of chess in their lives, as per your point, Chris. A lot of chess players were very comfortable in the chess world and not so comfortable elsewhere. And chess doesn't invite the social interactions that might be required for other aspects of life. So a lot of chess players were very focused on chess only.
It's kind of remarkable that you had this diversity, because you moved a bunch. You had a language barrier to overcome. It would have been pretty easy to retreat into the known and this thing that you are really good at, and not sort of expand and play these other sports and have a very sort of normal Canadian kid experience. Yeah, I don't know if I'm asking for an answer or response to that, but I just, as an observation, it's pretty cool that you didn't sort of fall into that pattern.
Thank you, Chris. And I think that a big part of that is my parents actually being unhappy that I wasn't doing better in school, because I was just an average student doing other things. They were happy that I was doing these other things, and they wanted me to do these other things. They pushed me to be better, and they wanted me to be occupied. And of course, my sister was always a great role model in showing me a path which was very different from the chess path, where she was and is achieving great things.
So you finished high school. Did you go right to university?
I did go right into university, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. There wasn't a bachelor's of chess out there.
Too bad.
Yeah, and I wanted to study chemistry for one main reason, which is I really enjoyed chemistry in high school because I had this one incredible teacher, Miss Farmer, who I really liked, and other classmates really liked her as well. And I thought chemistry is the right place for me. And I got accepted into different chemistry programs, and I decided to do an undergraduate degree in chemistry at York University, which allowed me to actually live with my parents at home. So it would cost a lot less in that sense. I would just take the bus over to the university. And then in my first year, I realized that I didn't like chemistry. I really liked Ms. Farmer.
Right.
And it was a harsh realization. And then in my second year of undergraduate studies, I was doing quite poorly in a couple of chemistry courses, including organic chemistry. And I remember telling my parents, I just want to drop these courses. Chemistry is not for me. I should just drop this. It doesn't make any sense for me to pursue it. And they said, well, you should finish the courses. I said, well, I will fail these courses. And their response was, you should try. You should actually work hard. And if you fail, then you fail.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great approach. I actually studied for the remainder of that year, and I, of course, did not fail. But then after my second year of being a chemistry major, I did decide that I didn't want to pursue chemistry, and I changed to a more generic science undergrad at York University, Science and Technology Studies. And then I finished my undergraduate degree, and I actually studied more in my third and fourth years of undergrad, and I got my degree there. But I still did not know what I wanted to do thereafter with this generic science degree.
So we have a similar university story. it was Mrs. Farmer.
Yep.
Yeah, mine was Dr. Barr in second year university, and which is the reason that I took chemical engineering, and very quickly realized in third year, which is when we specialized at military college engineering, that in fact I thought Dr. Barr was a great prof and interesting, and I did not actually belong in chemical engineering, but I was locked in at that point. So, but like you, I just sort of put my head down and kept grinding to get through it, because there really wasn't much of another choice. So at what point did you, because I know that you did sort of dip your toe into the full-time chess world. At what point did you do that?
Mm-hmm. And I did a year of professional chess right after undergrad. Okay. And I got my undergraduate degree, and I didn't actually know what I wanted to do after. I thought it might be professional chess. I've never given professional chess a try, so I thought I should push myself to the limit there. I was already the top chess player in Canada for a few years at that point. And I thought I should do a year of professional chess, figure out if I want to do this long term, or if I want to do something else long term. And ideally, I would also have a bit of time to figure out exactly what that is. And I decided to do the year of professional chess. I was very fortunate to have support. I actually managed to have 3 sponsors during that time, including BMO.
Okay.
And I played a year of professional chess, traveled across the world, played in the strongest chess tournaments that I could. My goal was to cross that 2,600 threshold, that rating, and ideally crack the top 100 in the world. I was close to 200 at that point. I wanted to see what it would like to be that professional chess player. And it was a fascinating year. It did not go as I planned. I actually had a chess blog at that time, which you can still find to this day, where I was analyzing my games after I played them. And it was very interesting, where I had nowhere to hide during that year of professional chess, because chess was my life. Before, if I had a great chess tournament, doesn't matter, I have to go back to school. If I had a horrible chess tournament, well, doesn't really matter either. I have to go back to school. But now, chess was life, and it was very interesting to figure out how to make myself better. I had great successes during that year. I did crack the 2,600 rating. I also had some lows. I really cracked under pressure a couple of times in tournaments. Very interesting to travel and play chess for that year. I spent about 6 months of the full year on the road playing in tournaments, and then the other 6 months practicing and preparing for those tournaments.
So did it feel different doing it full time, vice part time?
It felt very different. I saw the opportunities to improve, where the opening phase of the game, I spent a lot of time on the opening phase, and I actually improved there. And it was previously a weakness of mine, because I was what you would call a part-time chess player, but now as a full-time chess player, I managed to get better, especially on the opening side. It also felt like work. Before, it was a lot. It was still tough, but it was a lot of fun as a professional chess player. It was work, and some days were better than others. Some tournaments were better than others. Nonetheless, I'm very happy that I managed to do that year. Felt like a lot of growth happened on my end on the personal side.
At the end of that year, is that where you decided to sort of take your professional career somewhere else, do something else?
Exactly. And I was going through the year, and I didn't know when I would need to make a decision about the year of professional chess. Um, and there was a tournament that I played in Mexico, and it was the Continental Championships. And it was in April of 2011, if I remember correctly. And I tied for first place. And it was one of the biggest, maybe the biggest achievements, maybe the biggest achievement of my career. And it actually meant that I qualified for the World Cup that would happen in Russia in August. And after winning that tournament, I thought, this is it. I won this tournament. I have some more tournaments lined up, and then I have the World Cup, where no matter what happens in the World Cup, I think that's going to be a great time to call it a year. It is very close to a year from when I started, and it'll be good to figure out what else is out there. And one of the best things that happened to me during that year of chess is that I met a lot of interesting people, and I met somebody who became a mentor for me at that time, and is a mentor and a friend to me today. And he also introduced me to different individuals, and he showed a potentially different path as well in pursuing the world of finance. So I played my year of professional chess to the end. My last tournament there was the World Cup in Khanty-Mansiysk, Siberia, in Russia. And then I closed the curtains on my chess career and changed gears to try to get into investment banking without actually knowing what investment banking is.
Yeah, you know what? As you're talking about this, I can't help but think, there's some transition. I'm wondering how your transition was. So since you're 5 years old, this has been a pretty instrumental part of your life, and now you've made the decision that well, I guess I'm assuming that it ceased to be, but let's assume that something else becomes the dominant narrative in your life. Was that a difficult thing to step away from, or was it time? Did you feel, you know what, like I'm good. I had my year. I hit these achievements. I got to a rating that I was really looking to reach. Was it a difficult thing to transition from, or was it the right time?
It was a difficult thing to move away from, because I knew that space very well, and I was the best in the country in that. Everything else was unknown for me. So that part was difficult, but in terms of it being the right time, it was very clear that it was the right time, because if I am to move away from chess, at this point, I'm an attractive asset for a company who may be interested in taking a chance on somebody who is very good at something else and is willing to work very hard. If I would play 5 years of professional chess, a lot less attractive of an asset, really, in the world of chess at that point.
Right.
So seemed to make a lot of sense. I think that I was also somewhat naive about how difficult the transition would be. And I was also very trusting of some individuals, including my parents, my sister, and mentors that I had, in them saying, well, this is possible. It's feasible to move there. And I think that in some ways, I am and was less concerned about change, thinking, well, it's the same language. It's not what my parents did in the past. It's the same language. I'm young. I can learn things. I thought that this is the right time.
Now, so the couple of things I want to ask you about here. So you move from being like world class at something into something that you've never done before. So I'm interested in what that felt like, but I'm also interested in what were the transferable skills from chess that you brought into the private sector that were really helpful?
Well, the transition was a very hard one. That I think that was the hardest time of my career in terms of going from professional chess to TD and investment banking, where TD took a chance on me, somebody who did not know finance, to actually learn on the fly. When I started at TD, I was the worst at my job on my team. I'm not proud to say it, but it's hard to deny it because I did not do an internship in investment banking or in finance. I did not study business or finance, but took a chance on me, and I was working very long hours all the time, trying to ramp up. And I think that it's often spoken about proving people wrong. I think about it differently. I think about it in terms of proving people right. And people took a chance on me. People supported and gave me this opportunity. I need to prove them right.
Right.
I cannot
Can't let them down.
I cannot let them down. Need to prove them right, and need to be very appreciative of that opportunity. But it was a lot of very, very long days, working weekends, and the hours in investment banking are generally hard. This was an incredible learning experience for me. I learned the world of business, world of finance. I grew up and I ramped up, and it was great learnings there. And in terms of transferable skills, I think the number one transferable skill is hard work. In terms of knowing what it takes to win, I knew what it takes to win from the world of chess, and I was willing to work hard in anything that I would pursue. And then the second transferable skill is strategic thinking, just thinking a few steps ahead, thinking about consequences. In that sense, that those two things came to be very useful.
Yeah, that strategic thinking one's a huge one. I don't. It's not that I don't think that most people are capable of it. I just don't think most people have been in situations where they've had to develop that way of thinking. Yeah, I think that's a really useful skill to have in the world. Probably I won't embarrass myself by trying to define what investment banking is. So maybe I'll ask you. So what do investment bankers do?
Investment bankers, the role depends on exactly where you are. At that time at TD, I was working with TD Investment Banking Group in the mining team, and we advised mining companies on either financing or corporate transactions. So if they were looking to raise equity or debt, we would be advising those clients on that. If they would be looking to sell the company or acquire another company, we would be advising them on these types of transactions. So either raising money or M&A.
Okay.
That's two big buckets.
So did you like the work?
It was very interesting work, and it was working on big deals. I learned a lot of interesting skills in that process. Also worked very long hours and wasn't in control of my hours. And after 2.5 years in investment banking, I also realized that I'm still lacking some skills on my end because I became relatively good at my job, but I still wanted to see what other options there were. I wasn't sure whether investment banking for me would be the right thing long term or not, but I actually realized that I'm still lacking some skills that I would like to have. And again, based on guidance that I received from family and mentors, I decided to pursue an MBA at that point at the University of Toronto.
Okay. So did that help you not only sort of learn skills, but kind of understand where you wanted to go professionally in the private sector?
Exactly. And I was hoping to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up, going into the MBA. And I knew that I had gaps in knowledge and in education, and I really wanted to become more well-rounded. In hindsight, communication is a huge part of the MBA, where in a science undergraduate degree, communication is not a big part of the curriculum. In business and in an MBA, you learn a lot about communication and working with people. And after doing my MBA, I felt like I could have a conversation with anybody in a company about their work, be it in sales, marketing, finance, client services, and engineers. Pretty much any department, I had some sense of what the problems that they're trying to solve are. So it made me much more well-rounded. It also helped me figure out what I like to do. And during the MBA, it's a 2-year program at University of Toronto. So in the summer, I co-founded a tech startup with 2 other classmates, and it was interesting to see whether we can build a business during the MBA program. I and all 3 of us were very excited. In hindsight, also quite naive. We thought that things would be easier than they were, and we learned that product market fit cannot be underestimated, and we didn't actually find that product market fit. So we wrapped up the business a year after starting it, as we were graduating from the MBA. But I learned that I love building companies. I love helping companies grow. And then after finishing my MBA, I joined Wave Financial, which was a fintech that is still a fintech, which is based in Toronto. And it was a company of 90 people. And I was excited to figure out how to help that business scale.
The number of founders that I've spoken to who have said that starting, building and scaling a company is shockingly difficult. Your sort of story about building something and not finding that product market fit is, I think, a very common experience in the business world, because it is so difficult.
Yes, the highs are high and the lows are very low.
Is it, from your experience in the business world now, Mark, is it, do you get a sense, is it harder in Canada than it is in other markets? Or is it just a difficult thing to do regardless of where you are in the world?
I think that it's difficult everywhere. I think that the Canadian environment might be less inviting than the Silicon Valley environment in terms of starting a business. Also different mindset, different ability to raise money. At the same time, the Canadian market allows for opportunities to start businesses, potentially solve problems in the US still, while employing people in Canada, which has unique economics there, which we also had at Wave Financial. So I'd say it is harder in Canada than it might be in the US, but there are its own advantages too.
So you were at Wave Financial. So how did you find your way from there to where you are now? I
spent 5.5 years at Wave Financial. I had multiple roles there. While I was with Wave, we were actually acquired by H&R Block in 2019 for over $500 million, one of the largest tech exits in Canadian history. And after 5.5 years at Wave, I thought this is time for me to go back to a smaller team and help build another company. And I joined another tech company by the name of Humi. Spent a year and a half there, and then I decided to pursue a different type of an experience, where I joined People Corporation, a much larger business that is doing very interesting things. People Corporation used to be a public company, was actually acquired by Goldman Sachs Private Equity in 2021, so private equity owned, and I work with different parts of People Corporation here, including managing the Collage HR software business.
So What really attracted you or attracts you to that building business part that you've been so involved with since leaving, since you parted ways with full-time chess?
I love solving hard problems with good people. I love figuring out exactly where we are, approximately where we want to go, and then working with good people to actually get there. I find that process very rewarding. I find it a lot of fun as well in the process, and there are some bad days
Sure.
at times, but I think that it's fun. I'm fortunate that I've enjoyed the roles that I've had historically. I get excited about the challenges. The problem is when I actually get bored. I think that starting with the world of chess, I was really excited about that intellectual simulation that I had in chess, and I still follow the world of chess, but I'm not craving playing because I'm still getting that stimulation through work today. So I find it fun, interesting. It's exciting.
Well, so what I hear is that you've actually found a way to replicate the things that you liked in the chess world, complexity, problem solving, right? The end state that you need to work back from. The end state is winning, and you have to find that way to do that. Except now you get to do it with teams, which is always kind of cool when you have a group of like-minded people working together to achieve something. So it sounds like you've really found the way to pull those things you loved about the game of chess into your professional life.
I think so, and I think that working with people makes everything better, as you said as well, in terms of that teamwork aspect.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So are you involved with the world of chess beyond being a fan and following the following the game? Do you still have any sort of connections into that world?
I am on the board of the Chess Institute of Canada, which is a leading chess organization here in Canada, and it helps build life skills primarily for children, and it helps make chess fun for kids while also teaching things like think before you move. Moves have consequences, and building strategic thinking, and really helping develop children across Canada. So very excited to be involved with the Chess Institute of Canada these days.
Yeah, I love those lessons. Those are I had actually had never thought about that connection, but those are really easy and stark things to teach through that. That's great. So other than following it, is there ever an opportunity you get to actually go and watch chess at a high level? I mean, do things come through Toronto at all, tournaments?
There was one big tournament in Toronto actually this year. It was the candidates tournament here, which involved 8 of the best chess players in the world, 8 of the best men's chess players in the world, and 8 of the best women's players in the world. And I had the opportunity to go with a previous guest of yours, and Sheldon Fernandez, and it was a ton of fun. And I went with Sheldon, as well as my dad and my wife in that first day. And Sheldon loves chess and knows a ton of chess history. My dad has been following chess since he was a kid, since the Kasparov-Karpov matches of much earlier days. And then there's my wife, Christina, who has never been to a chess tournament. And I think that it was a complete shock to her of what the chess environment is like and how truly quiet it is. Unlike hockey, which is what she's more familiar with, it was really great to be ingrained in the world of chess and see a lot of familiar faces who I haven't seen in a decade, and seeing people grow up as well, and watching some exciting chess in the process as well. That was a lot of fun, and seeing it as a fan now was different. I actually went to that day. Then I went to do a lecture at the Annex Chess Club as part of the festivities, a lecture on life after chess to give an update on what I've been up to, which had a great reception. And then I came back to another round of the candidates tournament with a friend and his son, and really enjoyed that experience. After those 3 days of chess, though, I thought this is enough for me. I was exhausted, and chess for me is a lot of fun, but it's also very draining. It's a different type of adrenaline that I get when I do an exhibition or watch a lot of chess like I did that day. The brain actually struggles to turn off. It's a strange sensation. I always think that chess is the hardest job that I've ever had, in terms of pure concentration for up to 7 hours, for a period of 10 days, versus now a corporate job. It just feels easier, less intense than the world of professional chess.
Yeah. So when you go to this tournament, like how long are these matches or games? Whatever the rate vernacular is.
The longest games can go is usually 7 hours. It depends on the specific tournament and format of the games. That in the candidates tournament, it was a specific time control. I think that it was up to 6 hours per game. So it can be quite the journey to watch the games for 6 hours, and it isn't all that exciting in a lot of aspects of it, where chess is actually trying to make a move to be more spectator friendly.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of curious about. What does that look like?
Well, and this is where there are usually 3 types of time controls. There are the regular time controls, which I'm talking about here, the 6-hour format. But then there are 2 faster type of time controls. There is a rapid time control where the game can last up to an hour, usually. And it all depends on how much time you have on the clock. So it might be 30 minutes for each player for the whole game. And then there are blitz games, which are now becoming more popular, especially online. So these are games that can last up to 10 minutes, where you can start with 5 minutes for each player for the whole game. And now streaming has become very popular in the world of chess, with Hikaru Nakamura being the number one known chess streamer out there, and also one of the top chess players in the world. And he plays a lot of blitz online and is being watched there.
Okay. Is it like, so how different are the formats in terms of your applying your skills? Do you need to develop skills differently depending on the time format?
Yes, it is. I'd say that there's a correlation between skills across the 3 formats, but everybody has a preferred format, a place where they are stronger. So, for example, Hikaru Nakamura, stronger in blitz, also very strong across the other 2 formats, but number 1 or number 2 in the world in blitz. And there are some grandmasters and players who are just very strong in blitz versus the other 2 formats. It also speaks to the types of mistakes that you can make in a regular or classic time control, where your opponent can have 30 minutes to think about one move. Mistakes are going to be punished.
Right.
In a blitz match, it is very hard to punish mistakes. So your ability to actually navigate yourself out of problems and just create fast problems for your opponents is very important. And I think logically, younger players are stronger in the blitz time control, where they might be able to think faster than individuals who are older. And in the way that the world of chess is moving, I would be considered older at this point, because chess is just getting younger and younger.
Yeah, I can see a world where if there's more eyeballs on blitz, I mean, that's where the money goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, that's the market, right? You're talking about market fit. I mean, there's your market fit right there. If people are watching blitz and they're excited by blitz, that's where the purse is going to be.
Exactly. And in chess, there are 3 potential outcomes in terms of white wins, there's a draw, or black wins. In regular time control, players are very well prepared, and there are a lot of draws. In the top games, more than 50% of games are drawn. I would say more than 70% of games. There was a world championship match. I believe it was Magnus Carlsen against Fabiano Caruana, where they played 12 games, and all 12 games were drawn in the world championship match. And it's not spectator friendly. And of course, this lasted for 2.5 weeks for 12 draws, and then they had to play a tiebreak in a faster time control. So now a lot more tournaments are going in the faster time control way, and it's more exciting. Magnus Carlsen, the top chess player in the world, really loves playing faster time control as well. It's more exciting to watch. It's also more exciting to play. You can finish a tournament in 3 or 4 days versus 2 weeks, which is also easier on the players themselves.
Yeah, no, of course, that makes great sense. And I've seen some of the blitz online, and it's exciting. I mean, even when you don't, I think the thing that makes it interesting is even when you don't really know much about chess, it moves fast enough that it feels like watching a hockey game or something, right? Like, you don't have to know the intricacies of the game of hockey to go, oh, okay, like, pieces are coming off the board, and there seems to be advantage here. And even when there's not, it's just dynamic. So yeah, I can see the real appeal of this growing for sure. Hey, Mark, this has been a great conversation. But before I sort of wrap things up, maybe I'll just sort of see if there's anything that you want to leave with the listener before we close the episode.
I feel like we are very fortunate to live in Canada and should not be taking that for granted. I know that from experience, having lived in 2 other countries that are more challenging to be in, especially during these times. And really enjoyed the chat here today, Chris.
Yeah, so did I, Mark. I mean, it's fun to talk with you, and I learned about a world that I knew nothing about, which is always great for me to be able to sort of pick at something and make myself a little bit smarter about the world of chess. And I thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story and being one of our Northern Sentinels.
Thank you very much, Chris. This is great.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mark. Please subscribe to The Greater Good on Substack to get this and other content to help you citizen better. Thanks for listening, and goodbye until next time.